Okay, so continuing off from the last video, we're just going to continue on making or integrating kind of physics into our game. Where we have now is we have just our guy moving around, and he's using physics to do that. So he's setting himself a velocity, but the next step is kind of having him crash into stuff. So to crash into things, you need two things. One is a rigid body, and two is a collider. You also, I guess, need a third thing is something to collide into. That's also something you need to do to collide into something. So to make the thing first that we're going to make is the thing to collide into, and that's going to be the asteroid. At least for me, it's going to be the asteroid. If you have a different thing, you can do that. And to put that guy in, we have to go to our scene view, and then we can just drag this sprite in there. So we have our asteroid, but for us to actually collide with him, he needs a thing called a collider. It also needs to be specifically a 2D collider, because we're using the 2D version of physics in Unity. So if we though search up collider in our add component menu, you'll see there's quite a few. For this asteroid, because he's a kind of circular in nature, that I have at least, I'm going to do a circle. There we go. Circle collider 2D. If you have a more boxy collider, you can do box collider 2D. And then polygon collider is the other kind of one that we use a lot, but I'll use that for the player, and you'll see what that does in a second. For now, I'm just going to do the circle collider 2D. And that's all I really have to do for him right now. So he should be just fine like that. On the player, though, we're going to have to add a collider. Now, just to show off the reason why I don't really think doing something like a box collider or even like a capsule collider would be very good here, is if you say like box collider, you'll see how this collider has these kind of squares on the side. And that means a collision could happen if something hits that little corner of the spaceship, which no player is going to think that's actually where the collider box should be, right? So I'm not going to use a box collider for that reason. I'm going to instead use a thing called a polygon collider. And the polygon collider kind of figures out whatever collider mesh should be kind of mapped to our ship. Obviously, you don't want to use this all the time because it does have a lot more like vertices and everything that it's trying to calculate, and it's a little bit more performance heavy. But for things like our ship, where we really would like the precision, the collision to be accurate, we'll want our ship to kind of have an accurate hitbox. And that's essentially what we're doing, is making a colliding hitbox for our player. So now that we have our two components, our three necessary parts are our rigid body, which we have on our player. You only need one rigid body amongst the other two things. And then you need colliders on both of them, and then you need the other object, obviously. So we can now go into here and we can hit it. You'll now notice because spinning, but we can hit it. It doesn't move though, and it doesn't move because it doesn't have a rigid body. If something just has a collider on it, it's kind of treated as a standing object, like objects that won't move. So think of kind of like a wall or something. So you'd still collide with the wall, but you hitting into the wall isn't going to really move the wall in any fashion. Well, don't worry though, we'll eventually make this asteroid move. I just want to illustrate that it doesn't move if you don't have a collider on it. Now, the next part on this is that the ship is rotating randomly, and I don't know, maybe you could call that a feature, but it's probably not ideal. We probably don't want a spinny little ship like this. So, we're going to do that. If we don't want that, we need to go into our rigid body, and there's this kind of constraints thing, and it's a little awkwardly shown here because it just looks like it's just some text here, but you can click on this thing, and if you click on it, it opens up, and what we want to do here is click freeze rotation. So that means there's not going to be any physics rotation stuff that happens on this particular rigid body. As far as rotations go, it just won't do anything. We're still going to have the physics movement of X and Y, so of our position, because we want to be able to move our guy with physics, as we're doing right now. But this way, when we kind of move into this guy, we're not going to be rotating around or doing anything silly like that. Okay, so there's that part. The next part here, though, would be to actually get the player. So in a space shooter, typically what happens is whenever you hit into an asteroid, you blow up, you die, right? So to facilitate that kind of setup, we're going to want to have our player track when he hits our asteroid, and when he hits it, he's just going to destroy himself. He's just going to destroy the game object. It's going to go deleting, basically. And so to do that, we need to go to our scripts again. Now, none of start or update does kind of this tracking of collisions. What we need... sorry. Okay, so what we need instead is to have... we need another method. Sorry about all the coughing. We need another method, or another little section here, that that can trigger whenever we get a collision. And I don't think I explicitly said, but these things right here, start and update, are encoding what we call methods. And so this is the start method or function. Sometimes we call them functions. And this is the update function or method. And so what we want to do now is we want to make another method for when a collision happens on the player game object, or the player script. And so we need to do that. We need to type in void, just like all these other guys have. And then we're going to type in on collision enter 2D. For me, it does autocomplete, so hopefully it will with you too. It's very important that you type this exactly as it asks, and also provide in this in the parentheses. So these other ones don't have anything in the parentheses, but in this one it says a collision 2D. Whatever you call this isn't as much matter, but you need to for sure type in this correctly, because if you don't type it in correctly, it just won't work. It just won't do anything. Right? So if you and it's the same for update and start. If you were to like decide to spell update like this, it just wouldn't run. And you would be puzzled, like, hey, why is my update not working? And it's just because these are specific, like what we call like Unity magic methods. They just work. They get activated because they have a specific name, and because they have that specific name, there's specific times when they get kind of activated and the stuff inside them gets run. And so that's just an important thing to note, is if these things are spelled incorrectly, you might not be getting the correct, it won't work. It just will not actually fire, or won't do anything. It'll just never get called. So it's very important to spell these things correctly. Besides that, we're going to go into this collision enter. So this collision enter happens whenever the first point is that something collides. So as soon as they hit together, this will get called. There's other ones for collision. I think collision stay it's called, and collision exit, which is kind of similar on this. Well, it's like collision stay is as long as something is colliding with something, it's going to be firing. And then collision exit is when something stopped colliding with another thing. But for now, all we need is collision enter 2D. And what we're going to do now is just type in destroy, and then some parentheses, and in the parentheses we're going to say game object, and then end it with a semicolon. So what this line is saying in here is to destroy a game object, and this game object is the game object that our player script is attached to. So it's just going to destroy the game object. It's going to get kind of deleted, so to speak, when it hits the asteroid. So if we just save this just to see how this works, we can go into Unity, click play. It'll take a second, and then kaboom. Our ship disappeared because you can no longer see it in the hierarchy here. It just got destroyed, right? So that's what our code did. Now, so that function works. It's pretty good. The only downside to this kind of code as is that there may come a time in the future where we might want to have something that we can collide with, but that won't kill us, right? So if we had just another game object, I'm just going to drag just something else for example's sake. Say I had an ammo box and I wanted to collide with this thing, and it would give me maybe something good. Well, right now, as we've structured the code, colliding into this guy as well also blows me up. It kills me. So we want to have some way of differentiating between an asteroid and something else, right? Because we only want asteroids, at least at the moment, to kill us. And so to do that, what we're going to do is we're going to add a tag. And so the tags are located up here. If you see right underneath where it says asteroid, there's a name called tag. And if you click on that, it'll give a drop-down list. There's already some in there. You're probably not going to have asteroid. This is probably my mistake. I left it in here when I was testing this out. But you can go, if you don't have the asteroid tag, you can click add tag. I'm just going to delete this one for... Okay. I just removed it just to show the flow. And we're going to add it. And maybe now call it asteroid. Maybe we'll call it instead like enemy, I think. Enemy sounds better. Just make a tag and we'll call it enemy. Clicked off this. Enemy. And then you click save and you'll get this tag. You won't have this removed thing over here. That's just my bet. So just ignore that. We'll have this thing called enemy. So we can then go over to our asteroid. We'll tag it with enemy. Right there. And so now this asteroid has a tag of enemy. That's good. So now all we have to do now in our code is check with whatever we collided with to see if it has a tag of enemy. And if it does, then we'll destroy our game object. But if not, we won't do anything. So in our collision enter, we'll add a line here. And of course, the thing that we do to check something is if we want to ask kind of a question, we use if. We type in if, type in some parentheses, and inside of if we need to ask it, does the thing we collided with have the tag of enemy? Okay? And so the way we do that is we use this collision variable that we have here. So this gets passed in to this method that we have whenever there's a collision, and it passes in this collision 2D thing. And collision has a reference to the game object you collided with. And on that game object, it has then a reference to the tag. And also, it has a reference to the tag, but you can also do another thing called compare tag. And we'll type in compare tag, we'll put some more parentheses, and then some quotations, and in the quotations we'll say enemy. And then I'll add some curly braces to here. And essentially what this if statement does then is it says, hey, is the thing, the game object that we collided with, right here, have the tag, this is compare tag, that's what this is doing, is do you have the tag of enemy? And if you do, then we'll do the stuff that's inside here. So obviously we'll want to move our destroy game object code into that if statement so that it'll look kind of like this. And now, if we save that and we go back to Unity and we click on the play button, we can collide into our game object of our little ammo box thingy. It's okay, but as soon as we collide into that asteroid, we get destroyed again. Now that we got that, we got our collision working. And the last thing I guess is to do is to just add some little movement for asteroid 2 so that he can move a little bit. And it's a pretty simple movement, so we're just going to set that up. But to set that up, we're going to want to make a new script. So I guess it's about time. So we have our player script. We're going to go into our scripts folder, and we're going to right click again, and we're going to go up to create and click C# script. And I'll call this enemy. So I'll have the enemy script. We'll open this guy up, so it'll be up in a separate tab here. And so the enemy is just going to be pretty simple. All he's going to do is he's going to have a velocity, and he's just going to go that direction the entire time. But to do that, we're going to make a public vector2. That's what we want. And we're going to call this velocity. And you can just end that with a semicolon. And then what we're going to want to do is add a private rigid body 2D. I'll call it rigid. And we're going to do the same flow that we did pretty much with the player for a lot of this. We're going to get the rigid body component in start. So we're going to go rigid.get component. We're going to do less than sign. We're going to type in rigid body 2D. We're going to then do a greater than sign, a parentheses, and a semicolon. And that'll get the reference to the rigid body that is on the enemy, or the asteroid in this case. And then simply in update, what we're going to do is we're going to say rigid dot velocity equals velocity. And that's it. Okay. So now if we go into our game scene, we can't just click play. And we can't just click play because this asteroid needs to know that he should be an enemy. He should have the enemy script, essentially. So we have to drag that on him. But if we just drag the enemy script on it, there's actually going to be an error when we play. And I'll just play it just to show this error, just because it's a common one that we see a lot, and so it should be good to kind of show off. You'll see this. Console, missing component exception. There is no rigid body attached to the asteroid game object, but a script is trying to access it. And it'll even say you probably need to add a rigid body 2D to add the game object asteroid, or your script needs to check if the component is attached before using it. So what this is doing in our scripts is we're getting a rigid body, we're trying to get it, but unfortunately we didn't add the rigid body component to our asteroid, which means that when we try to access it, it's not there. It doesn't have a reference to this component, and so it fails because of that. And that's why it's throwing this missing component exception. So this is another runtime error that we can get in the game. It'll be fairly common if you're kind of starting off. So all you have to do to fix this, though, is just add a rigid body 2D to the asteroid. We'll also want to make sure that he doesn't have a gravity scale, because that won't work very well. And then you'll probably want to make the velocity something that has a value, because otherwise it won't move, it'll just sit there. So let's just make it like -2 for now. Then we're going to click play. There we go. We got a moving asteroid. And if we go and hit him, we still die. So what we'll want to do probably is as well add kinematic to this guy. Because the thing that was happening before is when you hit into this guy, even though you die, you still kind of like bounce this guy around, which kind of looks weird. And so what kinematic does is it says like, hey, this guy can still have a velocity, this guy can still move according to physics, but he's not going to take any, like, if he takes a hit, he's not going to get moved by that. He's still kind of responsive to forces like that. So now if I go like that, I still die, I still get a collision, but that guy doesn't end up moving. So we'll set that on our asteroid. And so that's where we're going to wrap up for this section. In the next this is probably going to be the end of the class, so we'll wrap it up there, and in the next class we'll continue on to make some more stuff in this game. Cool. Hope you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.